Oh, perfect. That sounds good. Say something, please. Last time was deafening, eh?
Deafening, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
This is perfect.
Do you have
That's my biggest fear as well, isn't it?
You're listening to Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz on the Men's Radio Station. Hello and welcome to MenSpeak Radio on the Men's Radio Station. In this week's MenSpeak Radio show on the Men's Radio, I just said that bit, I'm interviewing best-selling author and leadership guide Nick Williams. Nick is passionate about the intrinsic significance of every individual and the positive influence we can have on one another. How many difficult syllables was that? I was actually quite proud that I kind of licked that one. But he also understands that realizing and living this can be friggin' difficult. Join us to hear practical ideas on how you can become a leader, cultivate inspiration, and access your boldest, truest self. Now, I've known Nick actually for years and years and years and years. The first time we met, I think it was the first time we met, I had a marketing design studio on the Harrow Road, and it would have been the 80s, late 80s.
You were still in short trousers.
I was, and I had long curly hair. And I remember you coming in and saying, I'm leaving the corporate world and I want to start, I don't remember whether you said a movement of people who can do what they love and be paid for it. What was the corporate world that you left?
Selling computers.
You were selling computers?
Yeah. I was in IT, marketing and sales in the City of London, selling very expensive computers to Japanese and foreign banks.
Wow. You must have made a packet.
I was doing okay, yeah. But, you know, like a lot of people, I didn't feel it was what I was put on earth to do.
Yeah.
That's why I left.
So how did you manage your change?
Very badly, I think.
Really? So you're making the path easier for other people.
Yeah.
And they can learn from your experience.
You know, I suppose looking back on my life now, because that was probably half a lifetime ago, you know, and I think for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, you know, I feel like the first half of my life was the life I thought I was supposed to live. And the second half of my life has been about figuring out what the life I really feel I'm here to live is about. You know, so the conditioned life versus the true life.
So did you kind of tick all the boxes before you moved on?
What, in terms of a success, do you mean?
Yeah, they're supposed to.
Yeah, sure. Anybody looking at me on the outside would have gone, you know, the guy's got his life together fairly well. Had a nice flat in Fulham,
right?
BMW, you know, reasonable salary.
Wow.
You know, yeah. And to be honest, I was pretty miserable, you know.
For how long of it? Like for all of it, or just towards the end when you realised you outgrew?
I think I enjoyed it for a while, you know. It was work hard, play hard, camaraderie, all that good stuff, sense of belonging, you know, all the good stuff that work can give you, I had. But there was just this nagging voice in me saying, this isn't why you're here. You're not here to sell computers to Japanese banks.
Yeah.
But the harder question was, well, if that's not why I'm here on Earth, why am I here on Earth? And that's often the question we either find hard to answer, or we hear an answer and we go, nah, never do that. That seems too big and too scary. You know, if somebody had told me 30 years ago, you know, you're going to leave your corporate job, you're going to start a business, you're going to write
30 years ago?
I left my corporate job in 1989, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, half a lifetime ago.
Years.
If somebody had told me you're going to leave your corporate job, you're going to start a business, you're going to get to speak all over the world, you're going to get to do all the things you've done, you're going to write 16 books, I'd have told them you're blooming stupid, you know. You're deluded. I would not have believed it, you know.
Yeah.
So one of the things I talk about is, you know, often I think when we're actually inspired, we think we're deluded. Right. And of course it is possible to be deluded, so I'm not saying it's not possible. But I think often when we're truly inspired, you know, it's like our soul giving us an idea of forthcoming attractions or forthcoming possibilities. Yeah. Because a lot of what I dreamed but then told myself I was stupid to dream about, I've kind of achieved today. Or not so much achieved, I'm living it. So I'm a great believer that, I suppose the way I would describe it is, you know, people come with a soul purpose, if you like, a dream in their heart. But most people just never get to live it out.
And how do people find out? And how did you find out? Because what you've done is actually, it is literally start a movement of people not being owned by the shoulds and following their hearts.
Well, misery is a good motivator. On the whole, you know, I didn't like the idea when I first heard it, but I think the older I get, the more I realise it's true. You know, we're motivated to change either by inspiration or desperation. Yeah, and sometimes we don't change until things get too painful. Although I was aware of wanting to kind of leave and start my own business, it took me years to actually pluck up the courage to do it. Misery and unhappiness and desperation are good motivators. But then I think the positive way of navigating is to listen to that little voice inside each of us. I think it's always nudging us. I think part of us, if we're really honest, we know what we'd love to do. But then we talk ourselves out of it. We're terrified to do it. We hit our own, I call it our resistance. So, you know, I've had a massive amount of my own resistance, but I've just kept plodding on and, you know, kind of blossoming and blossoming. You know.
Would you say it's fair to say that life's whisperings or the inner voice whispering is generally there, and if it's ignored, then it could be a bit of a stern words or a shouting or a slap.
You know, I don't believe that life wants to punish us or hurt us. I do think, you know, things in life work to, if you like, wake us up. So if we don't hear the kind of gentle alarm, then we'll get the kind of louder alarm. And if we don't get the louder alarm, then we get the, you know, the 4x2 on the side of the head to kind of wake us up. You know, I've heard so many people say it's not until they got ill or something terrible happened or they had a brush with death or brush with somebody else's death, they went, hang on, what am I doing? Is this really what I want to be doing with my life? So sometimes we do need the wake-up calls, and that's why I am also a passionate kind of advocate of listen to the inspiration, don't wait for the desperation.
What would you say comes in the way from people listening? Like, I'm guessing, you know, you're very well known as a Course in Miracles person as well. And for me, a lot of the Course in Miracles is quite simply choosing love or the illusion of fear. So what flavors of fear do people need to overcome in order to step into who they are and why they're here?
Wow. I think there's hundreds, if not thousands, of flavors of fear. But you're right, you know, and I love what you just said, because it is that simplicity of understanding there are only two forces at work. You know, I talk about love, or in the work environment or in companies, I would talk more about inspiration rather than fear, because, you know, many companies still would run for the hills if you start talking about love in the workplace. You know? So I talk about inspiration or creativity. But yes, it's recognizing that even though there may be hundreds of forms, there's only two sources, if you like. Whatever we do can either be sourced out of love and inspiration, or it can be sourced in fear. So it is that simple recognition that there's only two forces going on. But, you know, yes, you know, I wrote a book a few years ago called Resisting Your Soul, and it was all about helping people just illuminate what resistance is and how it operates. And it operates everything from procrastination to our fierce inner critic to perfectionism to addiction to you know, just distracting ourselves. There's so many ways of distracting ourselves today. All ways of just kind of avoiding that voice that says, this is what you're here to do. This is what your life's about. You know, and that idea of like, every time we hear it, we go, is there somebody else I can talk to? You know, is there another way I can distract myself? Because often we just get terrified. You know, everything that I do today, you know, whether it's writing, speaking, coaching, broadcasting, I have had a level of fear and resistance to doing, from sometimes fairly mild, sometimes moderate, sometimes, you know, chronic. You know, sometimes I've thought I could never do that. It's too scary. And I've had to face terror to do it. But on the other side of it, it's like, wow, why was I ever so scared of doing that? It's like, you know, our fear wants to keep us small.
So it's the thought of it. But once you've stepped into it, then it's a different story.
Well, here's my belief, and I'm not saying this is true, but my belief is, personally and professionally, having worked with lots of people, it's like there's a flow that wants to happen in our life, and our fear and our resistance and our ego wants to keep us out of that flow. So when we have the courage to kind of keep pushing through the resistance and getting into the flow, we kind of get into that place where we're kind of going, what was all the fuss about? Why was I going through such hell? You know, I've often been terrified to stand up and give a talk in front of, you know, 100 people or something. But then within 30 seconds or a minute of getting up to give the talk, I'm going, I'm loving this. Why was the me sitting in the chair a minute ago so terrified of what I'm now loving doing? And I think that's what, you know, when I'm coaching people, that's often what I'm helping them do, is to get beyond that threshold. I'm sure you are as well. It's getting them over that threshold into doing what they love and doing what they're on earth to do, so that they kind of go, this is why I'm here. You know, the first time I ever gave a public talk, I think, was in Cirencester in 1986 at a transactional analysis conference. And I tried to talk myself out of it. I hoped nobody would turn up. You know, I went through so much stuff around it. But within about a minute of starting to talk at this conference, I kind of went, I love this. But it took me another 3 years to kind of leave my corporate job to say, this is the kind of thing I want to be doing full time. But it was like a taste of something, and I'm sure many people can relate to having a taste of something. They think, wow, you know, if I could only find a way of getting paid for doing this and spend more time doing it, I would have a happy life.
And is it about monetization, or is it about trust, or is it about something else, or balance, or?
It's a great question, and I don't really want to give definitive answers. I think the important thing is that you had that flow and that joy, that inspiration somewhere in your life. If it remains a hobby and then you have to do something else, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think we often put ourselves under massive pressure to say, well, I love writing, I've got to find a way of becoming a professional writer.
Yeah.
I couldn't be a professional writer, even though I've written 16 books. It's not a great income stream.
Yeah.
My income comes from coaching and speaking, and I love doing those too. But I think it's two things. I think it's number one is putting yourself in that flow. So I've given loads of talks, and for free, done coaching for free, and then people hire me. So by doing what you love, it connects you with other people. You build trust, you build reputation, you build rapport. But secondly, you build your own confidence, you build your own competence as well. You get better at it. And the better at it you get, the more people are likely to hire you for it. But then my experience is there is an invitation then. I'd use the word invitation. There is an invitation to become more entrepreneurial around it. Often people aren't going, I'm looking for you. You have to show up and say, here I am. And then they go, oh, I didn't know you existed. No, I'm interested in what you do. So the language I use a lot is the language of showing up.
Right. And I wonder about, there are so many people that I have met who have thought that they are Jesus, or I am the healer that will blah, blah, blah. And I would say some of them probably are. I mean, to an extent, at some level, we all are. The essence of love, or whatever it is. But a lot of people are, I am here to do this glamorous thing, or this spiritual thing, or this wonderful thing, etc. And I wonder how people can know whether they're being delusional, or whether it's their ego, or whether it's their calling, or whether this is a stepping stone, or whether it's a spiritual bypass. Do you have any tips on that one?
Great question. I'm cringing because I think I've probably been guilty of some of the things that you've been describing as well. We all do. And again, you mentioned earlier A Course in Miracles. So part of my answer to your question would be, something I learned in The Course in Miracles is they talk about the difference between grandeur and grandiosity. And I think kind of what you were touching on then is what I would call grandiosity. Yeah. That it's very possible to have a gift or to be very good at something, but then get very grandiose around it, which to me means our ego inflates us. It makes us into somebody special, or makes us think we're somebody special, that we're somehow superior or better. But what I've also realized is that grandiosity can work to deflate us. That what I suppose what I would call today over humility is also a form of grandiosity, because I think we're all, amazing spiritual beings. So to say, well, I'm just a useless heap of crap, I've got nothing to offer, that's actually grandiose as well as saying, I'm the second coming, I think they're both grandiose, but they're just different extremes of being grandiose. But what the Course in Miracles talks about, and this is the kind of path that I have wanted to be on, or aim to be on, and help others to be on, is what I would call showing up with our grandeur. Because the Course in Miracles says inside everybody is a grandeur of spirit. Came with our creation. In a way, there's nothing we can do about it. It's how we were created. We can not know about it, or we can pretend we don't know about it. We can deny it. We can say we haven't got it. But I think, to me, the most amazing people are those that show up in their grandeur of spirit. Yeah. A lot of people do that in a public way. The people like, Nelson Mandela or people like that, they were in their grandeur of spirit. They weren't saying, I'm amazing. They're saying, we're all amazing. A few years ago, I got to spend an evening with Desmond Tutu. He was in London for something, and I was one of 100 people that spent an evening with him. And I just thought, this is a man in his absolute grandeur of spirit, because he wasn't saying, look at me, how amazing I am. He was going, look at how amazing we all are. Yeah. And he was doing that, waking up job that I think is so important. So yeah, I totally agree. It's totally possible to get into delusions and of grandeur and all sorts of stuff, but that doesn't negate the fact that I think there's still grandeur in everybody.
And I wonder whether that's just part of the pathway, playing big enough to know where.
I'm sure I've been an arsehole at times myself. I'm sure we all have been.
I have a medal for that one.
Sorry?
I have a medal for that one.
I thought you were going to give it to me for a minute. I thought, that's one medal I don't want. But yeah, and it's being kind to ourselves, because I think sometimes when we realise we've done it, we then beat ourselves up mercilessly for having done it. So it's, learning the self-compassion, the self-kindness, and going, yep, got on a bit of an ego trip there, but get myself off the hook.
And you have really hung out, in my opinion, with the best of them. I mean, I'm referring to, for example, to the days of alternatives, and alternatives attracts the best speakers in the world. Is there in any way a difference or something that these best people in the world, the people that really shift consciousness, have in common? Is there anything, or are they just, I don't know, do they have good PR? Is there something special about them and other people on the street who are living their truth and aren't famous or discovered or whatever it is?
That could be a whole conversation in itself. Well, yeah, one thing is they all show up. They're not pretending they don't exist. So they're willing to becoming visible. And yes, we could have a whole show on, the shadow side of spirituality, how somebody is on stage and in front of 700 people. It's not the same as they are necessarily in a green room or, having a coffee with them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them do have a call to be of service, and they do that brilliantly. I think, like all of us, they often struggle with their own egos. They can. I've been reading a book recently about somebody who's interviewed a lot of famous musicians around being a famous musician. I think as there is in the music world, in the New Age world, the spiritual world, there's people idolize each other.
Yeah.
That's another form of grandiosity. It's like putting people on pedestals. There's only one way to go when you put people on pedestals, and I think some of them probably put themselves on pedestals. Some of them hated being on pedestals because they kind of go, well, I'm just an ordinary person that wants to do something to help.
Yeah.
Don't put me on a blooming pedestal.
Sorry.
But yeah, I liked it. It was great. But another element I don't know if people would be interested in, but for me it was a real eye opener when I realised I loved it because I was immersing myself in the area that I wanted to be immersed in, which was personal growth, spiritual growth, human potential movement. But increasingly I became a bit dissatisfied because I realised I was living what I now would call a bit of a shadow life.
In what way?
If I'm honest, and this is where my grandiosity kicked in, and this is 20 years ago, it's like, here I am supporting all these thought leaders. Here I am organising talks and marketing talks for, well-known writers and speakers. But if I was really honest, I wanted to be the one speaking as well. I wanted to be the one writing books as well.
But you were writing books by then?
Not at that stage, no.
Oh, were you not?
No, not really.
God, you've kicked out a lot of books in a short space
I'm making up
time.
for lost time. Yeah, I didn't start writing until I was 38, 39, I don't think.
Wow.
So I've knocked out 16 books in 20 years so far. So.
Wow.
And I'm sure I can write as many if I live long enough. I feel more inspired than ever. I feel like more of a channel. But yeah, this idea of a shadow life, which I think is really important, because I think my belief is that all of us have a calling. There's something we are on earth to do. My first book was called The Work We Were Born to Do. So I do believe that, but most of us get conditioned out of it, criticised out of it, shamed out of it, whatever.
Yeah.
So we end up living a life that sometimes has the same kind of contours as the life we would love to live. So like I could, from the outside, appear to have been living the dream. I was immersed in the area of personal spiritual growth, hanging out with all these people, meeting people that loved them.
Yeah.
But the truth was, I wasn't expressing my own messages. And to some extent, I was probably still developing my voice. And I think that's part of growth. I remember reading a little quote from Victoria Wood a few years ago where she said, everybody has to mimic everybody else to start with. But as you get into mimicking other people, you get to find your own true voice. She was obviously talking about the world of comedy, that she started off kind of mimicking other comics and then found her own kind of true comedic voice and worldview. And I think that's the journey that many people can go on, is, you immerse yourself in what other people are doing and then you find your take on it, your authentic take on it. So I feel very much now that what I'm doing is my authentic take on a universal subject, if you like. I'm not talking about anything new, but I am talking about it in a way that resonates with a lot of people.
I guess it is about meeting people where they are, and there are certain people that will really get your language or really relate to your story or come from similar values. How have you dealt with the pedestal? Because I've experienced people wanting me to be there, whatever it is, and hand their power over, and it's like, no, I'm trying to manage my own for now, thanks.
Got enough neurosis of my own without you laying yours on me. Yeah.
So how do you manage things like that?
Sometimes well, sometimes badly.
Wince and run?
Yeah, I've always felt uncomfortable, but again, I had an experience, again, probably 20 years ago when I was hosting Marianne Williamson, who many people will know. Her best-known book is A Return to Love. And I was hosting an evening for her. There's probably 700 people there, and she had a line of 300 people wanting their book signed. And at the end of the evening, she'd pretty much finished signing everybody else's books. And I thought, well, she's probably knackered, but could I ask her to sign my copy of A Return to Love? And, I waited until everyone else had finished, and I was helping kind of lock up the St. James's. But I said to her, would you mind signing my book? And although she must have said the same thing probably to 200 people already that evening, she looked me in the eye and said, thank you so much for telling me how much my work has meant to you. I'm so glad my work has meant a lot to you. I'm so glad, my book has helped you change your life. And I felt like I was probably the only person that had ever said it to her. And she made me feel important for saying it to her. She really received my appreciation. And it was one of those pivotal moments, because I thought, well, at that point I wasn't an author myself, and I thought, if I ever become a published author, and if anybody ever says that to me, I'm not going to go, shove off, I don't want to hear your praise, I don't want to hear your gratitude. I wanted to be as gracious to anybody who said something like that to me as I experienced her being to me. So for me, there was about a graciousness. So it has been about kind of working through some of my discomfort. But if somebody says to me, the first time I remember, when my first book came out about 20 years ago, I was giving a talk up in Sheffield, and somebody bought a copy of my book to the talk I was giving, and it had all post-it notes in it and things highlighted. Wow. My immediate response was, oh no, she's found errors in it. She's found all the things wrong that she wants to take issue with me.
That is hilarious.
But I realised she was saying, no, what you've said in your book just touched so many chords with me.
Yeah.
And she was actually thanking me. And I thought, I'm probably going to have this for the rest of my life. I want to and need to, and I want to enjoy learning to live with this. So for me, that, I hope, is the grandeur. It's like if somebody says to me, what you said or something you shared really got me thinking and changed my thought system, I want to be grateful for doing that, because I think it's why we're all here. And if I'm doing it successfully, I want to graciously receive people's appreciation as I aim to appreciate people that have done that for me.
That's really intimate, and that's being in power and sharing empowering, actually. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, how would I have felt if Marianne Williamson had said to me, oh, God, give me a break, you're the 200th person to appreciate me tonight, just go home. I'd have felt gutted, I'd have felt devastated. I was trying to give her my gift of appreciation, and she received it graciously. So that was a moment where I thought, I want to do that to the best of my ability. And I don't always do it brilliantly, but, to have that ongoing gratitude.
Would you say that as you've changed and grown over the years, in any way your books have changed and grown, or are they a journey?
I'd like to say they're shorter.
And straight to the point.
Yeah.
What has the journey been, and what's the difference? 16 books. Where do people start? Because in my obsessive compulsive days, it would be start at number 1 and read the lot. By the time I got to the end, it'd be time to retire. I don't think, in many respects, I don't think
what I'm saying has changed. I think I'm just saying it from a deeper understanding of it myself. And if I look back, everything that I've written, the seeds were in the first book in a way. It's like I'm personally a believer that many of us, not all of us, but many of us, there's a few kind of questions we're asking and grappling with our whole life. And one of mine is about, well, what's our relationship? What is inspiration and what's our relationship to it? And what's the most powerful relationship we can have with inspiration? Some people might call that spirit. Some people might call that the divine, the universe, God. To me, it doesn't matter what you call it. But that's my inquiry. It's like, what is inspiration? How do I relate to it in the best, most powerful way? So all my books contain that in some way. And my latest one is called Be Inspired, Be Inspiring, Be Yourself. It couldn't be kind of more obvious what I'm talking about.
That first book was a classic. The number of people that have commented on that book, and these days it's easy to toss it around because I send a link. In the old days it was a lot more difficult because there weren't links and there wasn't so much email. When we come back after the break, I would love to hear more about this book. I am so chuffed. I love the way that our paths keep crossing, and it used to be the Northern Line a lot. It even has been the Mankind Project. It's been all over the place, left, right and centre. So we'll be right back after this break.
Listening to the Men Radio Station, where men really talk.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Davis. I'm the proud owner of Started Cigars in Mayfair and Knightsbridge. For the past 60 years, we've been providing the world's best Cuban cigars. When it comes to cigars, there's no other than Started Cigars from Mayfair and Knightsbridge. We at Starters would like to wish Men's Radio Station every support in their task for helping men's emotional and mental well-being. Check them out. Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Your call is important to us. You are now number 15 in a queue.
At Profile Insurance Services, we treat people as individuals. You'll speak to a real person, not a call centre. We're fast, small, independent, and have a superb team of insurance specialists. And they're really nice too. Advice is totally free and we cover everything. Call 0208 931 3306. Listeners to Men's Radio Station won't pay a penny for admin fees. That's 0208 931 3306. With Profile Insurance Services, you're covered.
Let me tell you about Jermyn Street Theatre. We are the smallest theatre in the West End, only 70 seats. We are a registered charity and not grant-aided, run by a small team of volunteers and trustees. Jermyn Street Theatre is a hidden gem. It combines the comfort and convenience of the West End with the intimacy of a studio. Every seat has a perfect view of the stage, and even a whisper is audible. This is a secret theatre in the heart of the West End, once found, never forgotten.
Slick 50 Barbershop is in Westcliff-on-Sea, Essex. Elaine, specialist in retro haircuts, has been trading since 1987. Music and lifestyle are her inspiration. You can also purchase merchandise and Toot Sweet pomade. The shop is open Tuesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Please call 01702 390 916 to book your haircut. Visit barbershoprockabilly.co.uk, Slick 50 Barbershop on Instagram. Gracias.
Not ready for making tax digital? Struggling to keep up with changes? Or do you simply need a friendly and reliable face to handle your accounting needs? With over 20 years of experience, BBK Partnership in 5 London areas provide personal advice, and all our partners are readily available in person and by phone at times that suit you. Give BBK a call today, 0208 216 2520, or visit our website, bbkca.com.
You're listening to Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz on the Men's Radio Station. Welcome back to part 2, where Nick Williams is going to show us, or tell us, how to be inspired, be inspiring, and be yourself. So this book's just out, hot off the press.
Yeah.
And people buy it, what, from the website or Amazon?
It's available on Amazon, available on my website.
And what's your website?
IamNickWilliams.com.
I am. So you type in IamNickWilliams.com, not heisNickWilliams.com.
Yeah, I couldn't get NickWilliams.com, so I had to have a variation on it.
So tell us about this book and the essence or any tips, especially we were saying in the break that in the old days, it was when people got older, 40s, 50s, that they thought, nah, I need to change my job. I need to get space for me to live my truth. Where now it seems to be happening when people are a lot younger. So tell us about the book and any tips that you can give.
Yeah, I think there was a book came out a few years ago called The Quarter Life Crisis. It seems like we're having our midlife crises earlier. To some extent, I know it sounds a bit funny, but I'm a fan of having crises. You know, not dramas, but crises, because I think they often do contain that opportunity. You know, if something really isn't right, it is an invitation to explore, to change, to probably unwrap a next chapter. So I'm a great believer not to try and just override unhappiness. You know, I think if we're unhappy, if we're depressed, if we're frustrated, as I have been myself, it's a sign, you know, it's worth listening to. But listening to with compassion, not listening to with judgment, going, you know, what's wrong with me? I've got this great job and, you know, why aren't I happy?
Do you know, it scares me the way that sadness, depression and all of these things are demonized and also fixed so easily by, I don't know, whether it's medication or drugs or drink or buying or sex or whatever it is. It's like, surely it's here to listen to, to feel, and then to heal, rather than to avoid.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. So be kind to, you know, your painful feelings, if you like. Is one thing, and then, you know, if you can do it on your own or with the help of somebody who's experienced, you know, inquire into what this is telling us. You know, what is your unhappiness telling you? You know, what have you outgrown? What is it time to blossom into? Because really that's one of the themes behind the new book. You know, I think that one of the purposes that inspiration kind of wants to serve in our life is it wants us to blossom. You know, I'm a great believer that inside most human beings, probably every human being, are dormant gifts, faculties, abilities, qualities that can be brought to life, if you like. They're already there in essence. Because I kind of look back and go, well, where were these 16 books 30 years ago? Were they in me? Were they waiting to be written? You know, I'm kind of curious. I'm not saying I have an answer, but I'm fascinated by what happens when people do follow their inspiration. I think one of the stories in the first chapter of the book is somebody I coached last year, and you know, she was an entrepreneur. She had her own business, but she'd been running it for 13 years, and she'd kind of reached a plateau. So I just asked her to start thinking about, so what would really inspire you, and you know, what's a new chapter of your life about? Within a couple of months, you know, she'd got re-inspired about her business. She'd got engaged. She'd started planning a wedding. She'd started an idea for a new business. And I almost felt like it was the kind of coaching equivalent of lighting a blue touch paper. You know, and amazing things happened. And so for me, there is an incredible power in just getting people to think about those kind of questions. What would really inspire you? Because we're so, generally in my experience, we're so quick to dismiss those kind of questions. It's like, oh, I've got an idea, but I can never make a living out of it, so there's no point even thinking about it. We don't give ourselves that space to go, you know, if I'm really honest, this is what I know I would love to do, you know. So, you know, I find, as perhaps you're saying, is, you know, in the past, maybe at midlife, people started asking those questions more. I think people are asking those questions earlier. They're going, I don't want to go down this route of just doing what I'm supposed to do, or I feel I should do. You know, and to me, it's a healthy thing to say, I want to follow some joy. I want to be happy. You know, to me, that's not self-indulgent. That's how spirituality lived. And I'm not talking about just shallow, hedonistic lifestyles. I'm talking about bringing a sense of deep joy to our life. And again, part of what I wanted to write about, and I have done in this book, is, you know, I think we're hungry for new types of leadership. You know, we've only got to look round at what's happening at the moment and go, so where's the inspiring leadership? You know, it's like we're almost having a masterclass in uninspiring leadership at the moment.
So when you talk about new styles of leadership, what springs to mind straight away is the conversations going on about the whole teal, the non-hierarchical, transparent, what's the name of that guy? Frederick... something or other who wrote, what was that book? I'll remember it in a minute. Reinventing Organizations. Is that the type, or are you talking about attitudes, or are you talking about listening and responding, or are you talking about...
Well, I think it embraces all of those, but I guess it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, what's the purpose of leadership? To me, it's not, those are the core questions. And so much leadership is obviously fear-based.
Yeah.
What if more leadership were inspiration-based? What if more leadership were love-based, coming from a place of love, coming from a place of inspiration, coming from a place? And the language I'm using more and more today is, this is what I'm becoming more comfortable with, and I see a lot of people resonate with this, is I would call it enabling leadership. Because I think there is so much in every human being that would love to be brought out. So much of leadership is about, I want to keep you in your place.
Yeah.
I want to control you. Don't get ideas above your station. And I love leaders that are confident enough to go, actually, I want to know how I can help you blossom. I want to know how I can help you shine. How can I help you do your best work?
To me, that sounds like a conscious man rather than a competitive boy.
Yeah.
Because it's empowering, it's collaborating, it's sharing, rather than just separating and competing.
You're right, and maybe it's because I'm older now that I'm probably less competitive than I used to be, and probably more secure in myself, that I celebrate other people's success rather than feel threatened by it.
Yeah.
And I did have, I think I've mentioned this too, but I did have a pivotal kind of set of experiences around this. And long story, but the brief version of it is I coached somebody about 10 or 11 years ago who was a TV producer. Lost touch with her for quite a while. A few years ago, I reconnected with her. She was at the time, and still is, the executive producer of Downton Abbey. Liz Trubridge is her name. And because I reconnected with her, she invited me on set a couple of times, and we ended up having lots of conversations, and we've ended up recording some of those conversations. I turned one of them into a product on my website. Right. And I didn't know what producers did, really. It was an alien world to me. And she said, part of my job as a producer is to enable the best performances out of everybody, whether they're in front of the camera or behind the camera. I know the end result I want to get. My job is to enable people to give their best so that we get a brilliant show out of it. And I, part of me almost fell off the seat when I heard her talking about that, because it was so different from the kind of leadership that I'd grown up with, which was about keeping me in my place, all that kind of stuff. And it just got me thinking about this whole idea of leader as enabler. What if political leaders were going, how can we truly liberate the talent of everybody in the opposition as well as in our own party? How can we liberate the talent of everybody in the country? Not feel threatened by it, but truly create the conditions in which people blossom. And to me, that's one of the definitions of great leadership. I was listening to a Radio 4 documentary a few years ago, and the woman at the end of it who was talking to lots of kind of experts on leadership, she said, my take on leadership is actually a leader as gardener. The best leaders simply create the environment in which people can naturally blossom.
Is that partly because the way that you speak, it almost feels like you hold the space for fear to come up, insight to come up, purpose, passion, spirit. Is that something that you would say you do at the books? You do at the private clients? You even do at the corporates?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. One of the things I've talked about it more probably in this book than a lot of books is, I don't know if I came up with this expression, but a heart that holds it all. In my experience personally, I've had a huge amount of suffering in my own life. I've had a huge amount of joy and fun and creativity in my own life. As far as I can tell, that's probably true for most people. Yeah. But in a way, we have often a kind of not a shrunken heart, but we only want the good stuff. And in my experience, I've had to go through some of the difficult stuff. In the language we might use in other arenas, I've had to look at my shadow. I've had to look at my pain. I've had to look at stuff that I've not wanted to look at. But as I've done that and kind of broken my heart open, I'm more comfortable than ever with all of it. I can have my depressed, even suicidal days, and I can have my totally inspired, I'm so happy to be alive days. but one doesn't negate the other.
Yeah.
They're all part of the human experience, as far as I can tell.
Maybe one can't exist without the other.
And I think, I think people are hungry to hear that whatever they're feeling is okay. Whatever their experience of being human is okay. And I think we put huge pressure on ourselves to be up a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or if we're down, then we're down on ourselves for having been down.
Yeah, hide it from Facebook. Just make sure when you're on and up,
make the most of it.
So how have you navigated those deep and choppy waters? Who's held the space for you, or how could you enable listeners to allow those places to be a place to go into and through and out the other side, either alone or with other people?
Brilliant
I
question.
don't know.
A number of different things, the Mankind Project that you and I have been involved with on and off for years. Well, I've been doing men's work for 30 years, so I've been in circles since in the mid 80s, I think. So, it's probably taken me several decades to grind down some of my own defence mechanisms, if you like. Yeah. But I now realise that when I see a lot of bravado, either in myself or other people, less so probably in myself now, but in other people, it's like, I know there's probably a scared boy behind that bravado, or a scared little girl behind that bravado. So in a funny kind of way, I have more respect for people's defences, because I think defences are there for a reason. Don't try and batter them down. They will, the safer people feel, the more likely they are to let their defences down. So I think telling our own personal stories helps, that we've been through difficulties and we come out the other side and we're actually wholer and more solid for having done that. That can inspire people. Being that, that's why I'm calling myself more of a guide today. I read a business book at the end of last year, and it was talking about how in business you shouldn't really set yourself up as the hero, because if you're setting yourself up as the hero, where do your clients fit in? You're then in a way in competition, because you're saying, well, I'm the hero. So I think the best kind of leaders are guides, because they're saying, I want you to be the hero, and I've been through my own kind of heroic journey myself, so I can guide you through it, and I can be that safe mentor and pair of hands for you.
And would you say that there are specific benefits doing this type of work amongst men? Or is that part of it? Because we mentioned the Mankind Project, and I know that that's another place that our paths crossed a few times. And now you're with the elders at the Mankind Project. So
I'm actually beginning to feel like one. Instead of feeling like an imposter, I'm feeling like a real elder. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. I am getting older, so it's just the reality. But yes, out of all, interestingly, I do belong to a kind of local circle that meets every 3 weeks, and I belong to a kind of, a London circle that meets every few months, and I probably call them my tribe now, one of my tribes. There's something for me about being amongst elder men that aren't competitive, that have kind of been through the highs and lows of life, and they're still standing and still laughing. That's precious.
And how does it change when women are around?
Well, we don't invite the women into the men's circles, but I like being around. I'm very happy to be around, women who are wise as well, if you like, who are, can laugh at the stuff that we get up to in relationships, and who, have got a sense of humour around it all, and don't kind of take it all quite so seriously. It is serious, but not to take it quite so seriously.
Yeah. It's an interesting one at the moment for me, because I've been running my men's groups for like 17 years now, probably. And on Saturday, so I run Men Facilitate, which is to train people, men and women, to facilitate men's groups or communicate with men, etc. Because obviously women work with men, even if it's as a therapist or in care. And yet again, I have a female, I think she's a therapist, coming on the course. And I've actually invited her to one of the online groups. So there will be a woman and an online men's group for the first time, which is going to be very, very interesting for all of us. And she wants to work, same as half a dozen other women I know, specifically wants to work with men, which I think is great. It's absolutely great. I mean, I ran a women's group last month on International Women's Day. And it's not something that I feel I can really, really do or understand at the depth that women might need being together, because I don't know what it's like to have female hormones for a start. And I can't imagine any woman knows what it's like to have testosterone pumping through them. It's just like, oh my God, give me my life back. But an interesting situation, and the number of women that have said, oh my God, can't I just wear some clothes and a hat and paint on a moustache? Please let me come. Especially my wife. Please let me come and know what it's about. But it's a very, very different vibe, with a very different experience. And I find a very different language as well. And I don't know about you, whether you work mainly with male or female, but I find that a lot of men come to me because of a common language, and some of that language is grunting rather than lots and lots of syllables and speaking and describing. It's just knowing where we're coming from and relating on that different level. Would you say that you have that in your life through all the circles? Or do you have it in your life across the board, even beyond the circles? Is public life more female orientated or more? What's the difference? Is that that's a really complicated
about
story.
6 questions in there.
I know, such a bad habit. I need to sharpen up.
Having worked in the kind of spiritual New Age world on and off for 3 decades, probably, often 70 or 80% of people there are women.
Yeah.
So I think I would probably more term it in the language of feelings. So I think it's really precious when men can talk more about their own feelings without feeling ashamed or anything, and have that language of feelings. Women generally tend to be more in tune with the language of feelings.
Yeah.
So I coach a lot of women. I do coach some men as well. So I'm not sure quite what your question is, but my feeling is that we all need to be more in touch with the language of feelings, the language of our heart, the language of our deeper selves, both men and women. I think there is a real purpose in doing that kind of separately, in safe circles. And then I think there's a tremendous value in doing that together. And listening to each other's experiences, because I don't know, this is a big generalization, but I think a lot of women assume men don't have feelings, or don't have deep feelings. And having sat with men for 30 years in circles, boy, do they have feelings, but sometimes they're really hard to get to. We've been so defended against them, and often they're painful, and you have to go through the painful ones to get to the joyous ones sometimes, and the happy ones and the loving ones. But I think men can be phenomenal. I know men at their best. And I think we tend to get a bit of a bad rap, but I think men in touch with their love and compassion and fathering energies and compassionate energies are amazing.
I think one thing that you said there that really struck me is one of the 2 reasons that I went to the Mankind Project. One was because I've been running groups for so many years, I needed to check whether I'm a megalomaniac. Or whether
somebody would have told you by now if you were.
And on the other hand, it was personal development amongst men rather than predominantly women, very often single women. And it's like, I want to grow and I want to be safe here, rather than thinking there are just too many women who want to go out for lunch and find a partner who's even slightly aware or something. There's a huge shortage. I was emailing with Jan Day today. Do you know Jan?
I know of her. I don't know if I know her.
Brilliant woman. And now I'm really getting into the whole dating scene professionally. I'm happily married. But what I didn't realise until a couple of weeks ago is how many men attempt suicide because of issues of the heart. Because they
Isn't suicide still the biggest killer of men under 40?
Exactly.
It's not that we don't have feelings. It's like we don't necessarily know how to access them or validate them or how share them.
Exactly. Or where to share
isolation are massive, I think.
Absolutely huge. So it was a treat to be amongst men and to be able to open up and just let it go. Where I found that in a mixed group, it was just too complicated at times. I didn't want to be saved or fixed or smothered or processed or anything like that. It's just give me my space. That's not to say that it doesn't work. It works a treat. And I love, for example, that in a very female environment of the College of Psychic Studies, they asked me to run men's groups there, and I have been doing so for years. And it's so great to be bringing that balance. And it's hilarious the way when things first started, and we're giving a talk about men on our spiritual pathways there in their open evening quite soon. The women, you can feel the room swoon. It's like, here are some masculine men with open hearts talking about our pathways and who we really are. I love that they swoon. And there's also a sadness, because surely this should be normal and there should be space for it. So it blew me away how issues of the heart can just like take men over the edge. It's also blown me away because, you know, traditionally, apparently men are supposed to be chasing women, and there's a shortage of women, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it goes. And I think that might be true until 20s, 30s or something. I don't know. But wherever I turn, people tell me what a huge lack there is of good men, and how many single women are just thinking, well, where are you? How do I meet you? Where do we? It's unbelievable. I had no idea. But yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So where would you say where would you like, because we've heard about how you are living beyond your initial dreams. Any idea where these dreams are going, and which dreams or fantasies would you like to attract moving forward?
Great question. I feel like I am in my way helping to participate in the healing of consciousness.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. In a way, I don't have an agenda for that. I tend to kind of... the way I tend to work is like, as I continue to do my inner work and my inner healing, opportunities just start showing up for me. It's almost like as I take a step forward in terms of me being less scared and more confident, doors open. And I can't necessarily anticipate that, but if there's a kind of influence I'd like to have, it's about, creating more enabling leadership. Leaders who want people to blossom. That's what I'm fascinated by. And I even came up, I think I put it in the book, but, I even came up with my own definition of leadership. I thought that would be a very bold thing to do. Well, not so much a definition, but, we tend to think of leadership as a positional thing.
Yeah.
You need to be voted for or anointed or bestowed upon to be a leader. And today, people are just choosing to lead because there's something inside them, a calling of the heart. So the way I've said it, I've said leadership is any act of love or any act of inspiration or any act of great creativity is an act of leadership. So anybody can lead. You don't need a position to do it. And some of us do it occasionally, and some of us want to do it more consistently and want to do it more publicly, because I know that how inspired I am when I see somebody leading with love or leading with inspiration, and when I can do that, and I think if I can have an impact and if I can help, I'm doing it. And that's partly why I wrote the book. It's like, it can't just be me thinking this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what, as a part of me, I do consider myself to be a kind of creative, and I think part of being creative is the ability to tap into a collective unconscious. And I think, as you're describing the kind of negative side, I think there's a hunger and a yearning for new ways, for new inspiration.
Yeah.
Why is Oprah Winfrey the most successful woman on the planet? She offers inspiration. That's what she says she's in the business of. She's in the business of inspiration. I think we need more people in the business of inspiration, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inspiration is a serious business, and I don't mean serious as in it's got to be heavy, but serious. Let's get serious about inspiring people. Let's get serious about opening people up to the possibilities. And
one word that I've heard you use a lot during the show is enabling. It's enabling other people, empowering other people.
Yeah, being confident enough to say, I want you to blossom.
Yeah.
And I won't, or if I am threatened by that, I'll work on my fear of you being better than me. But, you know, my friend Liz, who was the Downton producer, she said, you know, I get to look good by making everybody else look good. And I thought, that's a great way of looking at leadership. You know, you don't lose by enabling other people. You win. You get to look good.
I love the way that, in my words, you said that what you do is show up, listen, and respond, rather than thinking, right, I know what's going on. I know how I'm going to fix it. I know how I'm going to monetize it. I know how to
just
dominate.
get my toolkit out and I'll give you a tweak and it'll all be all right.
And that's vulnerable. Do you find that vulnerable?
Yes. You know, so, you know, there's a whole chapter in the new book about, I've called it openness rather than vulnerability. And I open it with a story. So can I tell the story?
Yeah.
A story of a coaching client that blew my mind, you know, just a few months ago. She hired me for coaching. She'd created a school in India. Long story, but, you know, she had to leave the place where she'd created this school and had to move to another part of Goa to open a new school. She'd had a personal betrayal in her life. And she wanted to start a new school and she needed funding. She needed 100 grand of funding to start this new school. So she found some local funders and they said, but why did you move? You know, it doesn't quite make sense. Why did you move from where you were and leave that school and want to start a new one here? So she made up a bit of a story and they kind of went away and then they came back to her and said, why did you really move? She, you know, they sensed her incongruence, but she thought if I tell them the truth, you know, I could blow this. But she thought, well, if I don't tell them the truth, I've probably blown it anyway. And the truth was that, you know, her best friend had had an affair with her husband. That's why she had to leave. She was devastated.
Wow.
So she moved, you know, town and to do it. She told them the truth. And they said, right, now we trust you. Here's your 100 grand. And she said that totally rewired her about her thinking about business. Her thinking about business is you put on a professional face, you don't tell people the shit that's going on in your life, and you put on the, you know, the professional pantyhose version of who you are. And she said, you know, if I'd done that, I would have blown it. But by being open, I actually created trust. And I thought, that's it. You know, openness creates trust. Vulnerability creates trust. And I think that's what a lot of people are hungry for. That's why I think so many people are disillusioned with politics today. There's no openness. There's no vulnerability. I actually was in an audience a couple of years ago where I got to ask John Major a question. It was in Soho, a place called the China Exchange, but he was just giving a talk for an hour and I managed to ask him a question. I said, how do we help humanize politics? How do we help our politicians to be more open? And at least he gave me an honest answer, and the honest answer was, he said, I've got no idea. Wow. I thought that's kind of telling from somebody who's been at the centre of politics for a long time, who's been around politics for a long time, says, I've got no idea how we're going to humanise politics.
Wow, that's
because I said, you know, that's why so many people are disengaged from it. And, you know, he agreed in a way, but he said, I don't know what we're going to do about it. He said, if anything, the pressure on politicians today is greater than than it was when he was Prime Minister 20 years ago.
I feel that what you're describing is the old way that's not that long ago, where it was have a big shiny logo and pretend you're a superstar business, to be you, share who you are, most importantly, share why you're doing what you're doing with your heart and your soul in alignment and shine.
Yeah, and be good at doing it. You know, bring your head to it as well. Bring good strategy, bring good business, but be driven or inspired by, as you say, heart and caring and passion and love for humanity, really. Self.
Exactly. You are inspiring.
Thank you.
You are a really lovely, honourable man that I've had the pleasure to know for a long time.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
And I'm so grateful that you came to hang out with us and celebrate the launch of book number 16.
Thank you very much. It's been a joy to be here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, guys.
And I'll see you on Monday, because you're going to be enabling people to write their own books and get published with the help of Julie Piatkas and Conscious Cafe. So lots of links to put on Facebook and everywhere else. And I'm being given a dirty look by my producer, James. So it looks like
time to shut up.
It is. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Bye.
You're listening to Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz on the Men's Radio Station.